Now, imagine moving to Canada, a country famous for its friendliness, only to feel suddenly unwelcome. In one recent incident, a Sikh immigrant on his way home from a Toronto temple had his turban yanked off by a stranger in an apparent hate crime. He was left so shaken that he said, "I don't feel safe. I'm planning to go back home because of this." It's a shocking story, and it signals a broader shift. I really don't like this topic, but I want to talk about it to show both sides of the story. Honestly, immigration is neither good nor bad. It just is. And most times, it's but a perspective. As we go along, I really do want to hear your opinion in the comments as well, okay? So, what we have seen in some parts of Canada is that hate crimes reported to police have more than doubled from 2019 to 2023, with nearly half of incidents motivated by race or ethnicity. This is surprising because Canada has been long known as a welcoming nation, so its negativity is really surprising. Polls now show a majority of Canadians believe that immigration levels are too high, a dramatic reversal from just a few years ago. Now, to prove my point, in 2022, only about 34% of Canadians felt the country was bringing in too many immigrants. Today, that figure has jumped to roughly 60%. So, what happens to Canada's warm welcome? Why are many Canadians growing anxious, even resentful about newcomers? Today, in this deep dive, we'll unpack why Canadians are becoming increasingly negative towards immigration, looking at the data, the real life stories, and the emotions that are driving this change. Now, to understand the mood shift, let's start with what Canadians themselves are saying. For the first time in a quarter century, a clear majority of Canadians, about 58%, now say there is too much immigration. This surge in concern has happened incredibly fast. In fact, public opinion flipped in just the last 2 years, rising by over 30 percentage points since 2022. One recent survey found 72% of Canadians believe that the government's plan to welcome nearly 500,000 new permanent residents in 2024 was too ambitious. And almost half of Canadians now feel immigration is making the country worse off overall. These are striking numbers for a country that long prided itself on being immigrant friendly. So, what's driving this backlash? Polls and studies point to a few common worries. The housing crisis tops the list. With home prices and rents soaring, about 73% of Canadians say an influx of newcomers is making housing less affordable and harder to find. The logic for fear is simple. If you add a record number of people to a housing market with limited supply, competition goes up, and so do prices. This worry bleeds into other areas as well. Around 62% believe immigration is straining our healthcare system, longer hospital wait times, for example, and 59% feel it's taxing our social services like schools and transit. In short, many Canadians have developed a scarcity mindset, the sense that there are not enough homes, doctors, or resources to go around everyone, so more people equals to more shortages. Economic anxieties also loom large. More than half of Canadians, 52%, now say immigration is increasing unemployment, a majority holding that view for the first time in recent memory. People worry about job competition, especially in a tougher economy. There's also the perennial question of cultural impact. While cultural concerns are mentioned less often than housing or jobs, they are growing. Only 33% of Canadians today feel that immigration generally enriches national culture, down from 58% who felt that way in 2002. In provinces like Quebec and Alberta, more people now say that immigration might weaken their cultural fabric than strengthen it. Concerns about community cohesion, crime, and security, issues often tangled up with cultural fears, have ticked up too. For example, 53% of Canadians now worry that rising immigration could worsen crime and public safety, which is up from 39% a year earlier. All of these concerns, housing, jobs, services, culture, form the backdrop to Canada's changing attitude to immigration. Importantly, this negativity isn't confined to particular regions. It spans regions and demographics. Even The strongest anti-immigration sentiment is found in the prairies, for instance, Alberta, and in older age groups. Politically, it's most intense among Conservative Party supporters. About 70 to 80% of conservatives believe that immigration levels are too high. But notably, even significant minorities of Liberal and New Democratic Party supporters now share that view. Roughly 1/3 or more of them. And here is a telling detail. Even Canadians who are first-generation immigrants themselves are about as likely to say too many immigrants as those born in Canada. This isn't just old stock Canadians versus newcomers. It's a widespread sentiment that transcends backgrounds. So in summary, public opinion has undergone a big change. Many Canadians, perhaps for the first time in their lives, feel uneasy about immigration. They point to very real issues: a housing affordability nightmare, stretched public services, slower economic prospects, and social changes. Whether or not immigration is truly the root cause of these problems, the perception is now firmly lodged in the public mind that more people might be making life harder. Let's explore how each major category of immigration fits into this puzzle and why each has drawn public concern. Now, talking specifically about international students. Public concern around international students isn't personal animosity towards the students themselves, but it's a fear that the system is growing too fast. When citizens see tent cities outside colleges and when they hear non-permanent residents, mostly students, added over 300,000 people in a single quarter, the narrative becomes, how can we house all these newcomers if we can't house our own kids?
What a fucking pathetic joke Canada's become. Our country's being invaded by over 8 million people in under a decade. They're going to allow another 1 million people into the country this year.
Indeed, polls show younger Canadians from 18 to 29 are especially worried about temporary immigration programs like student visas being out of control. About 1 in 3 young adults feel that international students and temporary foreign workers are now competing with Canadians for jobs and resources. On social media, you'll find heated debates. Some argue that international students are driving up rental prices, crowding transit, or taking up part-time jobs.
I want to address something that I see on a pretty frequent basis, and it's this belief that people have that international students are stealing jobs from young Canadians. Because I do think that these guys are just doing the jobs that us Canadians don't want to do. Blame the companies, blame the organizations, blame these head honchos of these big businesses, because those are the guys who don't want to hire young Canadians. Those are the guys who are taking opportunities away from young Canadians because, and I'm not breaking any sort of new ground here, but there's this over-reliance that businesses have on hiring illegal aliens. Because why the fuck should they hire a young Canadian for a standard rate because they legally have to, and possibly over time have to pay them at a much higher premium rate, when they can just go and hire Harpreet Singh for $10 an hour to do the exact same job?
Others counter that students are being unfairly scapegoated for problems caused by poor housing policy. But it's worth noting, however, that experts urge caution about blaming students. These students contribute significantly to Canada. They paid over $30.9 billion into Canada's GDP in 2022 and supported 361,000 jobs that year. Many go on to become permanent residents, skilled employees, and even entrepreneurs in Canada. Some analysts argue that pointing the finger at international students is misdiagnosing the problem. While the housing crisis is real, pinning it on international students alone ignores many other root causes. The real issue is that Canada failed to build enough housing, not that it welcomed too many students. We'll return later to how better planning and housing solutions could address these tensions. But clearly, in the public mind right now, international students have gone from being welcomed as future Canadians to being seen by some as part of the housing affordability problem. Now next, let's talk about temporary foreign workers, or TFWs. People from abroad hired on work permits for jobs in sectors like agriculture, food service, caregiving, or tech on a temporary basis. TFWs have long filled critical labor gaps, Now think about seasonal farm workers or caregivers for the elderly. But as with international students, the past few years saw a massive expansion in these programs, and that has stirred public concern about jobs and wages. During the pandemic recovery, Canada faced acute labor shortages in many industries. In response, the federal government greatly expanded the TFW program to help businesses hire the workers that they needed. In 2023, Canadian employers were approved to bring in nearly 240,000 temporary foreign workers, more than double the number just 5 years earlier in 2018. In mid-2023, as public concern about immigration was spiking, Canada announced plans to scale back some pandemic-era changes to the temporary foreign worker program. Essentially, they wanted to tighten the inflow. In 2024, more Canadians than before cited the immigration system is being poorly managed by the government as a reason for the levels being too high. The temporary foreign worker program often comes up in that context. Many support it in principle, but they worry that Canadian government has let it expand too much, too fast, without adequate oversight. Now let's discuss the largest piece of the puzzle: permanent residents, particularly those coming through economic streams like the express entry. These are the skilled immigrants and families that Canada admits as permanent residents each year, historically the cornerstone of Canada's immigration system. By late 2024, that concern had grown. Another poll found 72% now feel the target is just too ambitious, with almost half of them saying it was way too high, and indeed, the government responded. In the fall of 2024, facing mounting pressure, the Liberal government quietly revised its immigration plan downwards.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. And increasingly, bad actors like fake colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years. Today, I'm going to let you in on what happened, where we made some mistakes, and why we're taking this big turn.
It announced that for 2025, the PR intake target will be 395,000, about 20% lower than previously planned, and then further down to 380,000 in 2026. Essentially, Canada hit the pause, or at least the slow down button on its big immigration push. Prime Minister Trudeau at the time admitted that the government didn't get the balance quite right in ramping up immigration while Canada was facing housing and healthcare shortage.
Today, I'm going to let you in on what happened, where we made some mistakes, and why we're taking this big turn.
This was a significant acknowledgement. It validated a lot of Canadians' concerns that capacity, that is housing and infrastructure, wasn't keeping up with population growth. Currently, a majority, 68%, still agree that immigration benefits the economy overall. But that consensus is eroding very quickly. People are now torn. Yes, immigration grows the economy in theory. But if we don't have houses for people and inflation is high, maybe it's too much, too fast. It's almost like a collective whiplash, going from proudly high targets to pumping the brakes in a short span. Refugee and family class immigration also fall under permanent residents, and we'll touch on refugees next. But it's worth noting the regional differences in how permanent resident growth is felt. Ontario, for example, took in around 200,000 immigrants in 2023, and Ontario residents are among the most likely to say that the levels are too high. Smaller provinces like Saskatchewan saw an even larger influx relative to their population. 25,000 newcomers, 2% of Saskatchewan's population in just 1 year. If you live in a small city that suddenly sees hundreds of new families arrive and rents go up, you might connect those dots and become anxious about immigration, even if you harbor no ill will towards the newcomers themselves personally. And this is what seems to be happening. Communities feeling stretched by rapid growth and translating that into anti-immigration sentiments. Now let's talk about refugees and asylum seekers. Canada has a proud humanitarian tradition, and Canadians have viewed refugees and asylum seekers with compassion for like forever. However, even this area has received some backlash as the numbers have continued to grow. In the past couple of years, asylum claimants in Canada skyrocketed due to global conflicts and changing border policies. I mean, just look at the figures. In 2021, about 25,000 people sought asylum in Canada. In 2022, that number jumped to 92,000. And in 2023, it hit 144,000, almost 6 times the number from 2 years earlier. This is a huge increase in a short time, and it overwhelmed Canada's shelter and support systems in certain cities. Perhaps the most vivid example was in Toronto in the summer of 2023. With shelter beds full, hundreds of refugee claimants ended up camping outside a downtown help center, sleeping on the sidewalk for weeks. It was a heartbreaking sight. Families from Africa, the Middle East, and elsewhere huddled under tarps and tents on busy Toronto streets, waiting for space in shelters that never ever opened up. Local volunteers and churches scrambled to provide food and temporary shelter in church basements. Toronto's mayor publicly pleaded for federal assistance, saying that the city couldn't handle the influx on its own.
I refuse to ask Toronto taxpayers to pay for something, a responsibility that is so clearly federal. Refugees, in terms of when they can come, how they come, when can they submit the applications for claims, and when they could quickly get a work permit. All of that is controlled by the federal government. We have no control over it. So we can't ask the local taxpayers to pay, so I won't do that.
The headlines about asylum seekers with nowhere to go were a wake-up call. They sparked debate. Some Canadians were outraged in support of the refugees. How can we let this happen here? We need to help them. While others were outraged at the refugees themselves. Why are they coming if we can't even house people? This is unsustainable. The bottom line is that Canada's refugee system faced volumes it hadn't seen in decades, and cracks began to show. The Immigration and Refugee Board has backlogs stretching for many years. Housing for claimants is insufficient. Provinces argue over who should pay for support. Canadians watching this unfold started to worry that we can't manage this influx. In one survey, when asked what causes high immigration concern, people did mention security risk and problems fitting in, though those were far less common concerns than housing or the economy. Still, the fact that such concerns exist at all in Canada shows a shift. A growing minority now question whether refugees will integrate or might bring social troubles to Canada, whereas a few years ago, that talk was mostly confined to fringe forums. Amid these tensions, it's important to recall that Canada's core values haven't vanished. There are still loud voices emphasizing compassion and realism, pointing out that asylum seekers are often fleeing life and death situations, and still think that with better planning, Canada can both uphold its humanitarian commitments and take care of its own people. In fact, nearly half of Canadians in one survey said that immigration, largely driven by refugees in their area, had a positive impact on their local community, suggesting that on a personal level, many Canadians still see newcomers as neighbors and contributors, not just statistics. But on a national narrative level, the refugee influx has fed the broader story of immigration adding to the strain of the system. So, in the refugee or asylum domain, the negativity comes from a sense of being overwhelmed more than from malice. People see images of asylum seekers in distress and they feel a mix of sympathy and alarm for their plight, but alarm about whether Canada can shelter and integrate so many people at one time. The mood has shifted from Canada can do this to can Canada handle all this? And that summarizes the current Canadian immigration dilemma. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please share this video with a friend as well. Now, we can't talk about public opinion without looking at the role of media and politics in all this. How Canadians perceive immigration is profoundly influenced by what they read, watch, and hear from their leaders. Lately, Both media coverage and political discourse have often highlighted the problems related to immigration, sometimes in sensational ways, which in turn fuels the negativity or reflects it. It's a feedback loop. On the media side, immigration has been front-page news in the context of crisis, housing crisis, ER wait times, inflation, etc. Headlines frequently link these issues with immigration. Housing prices grow as population swells. Hospitals strain under the influx of newcomers, and so on and so forth. While there are always also stories celebrating immigrant success or cultural festivals, those feel fewer and further between in this climate. More troubling, online and social media have seen in scapegoating narratives. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network noted that affordability woes have given fresh life to years-old anti-immigrant tropes, basically recycling old stereotypes like immigrants taking jobs or they don't integrate well into the society, and making them seem new again because of current stresses. Racist and xenophobic posts targeting immigrants have proliferated online in recent years. The internet algorithms can also create echo chambers where if someone is frustrated about rent, they get fed a viral post blaming international students or refugees for their woes, validating that scapegoat. Suddenly, a complex issue has an easy villain in the public imagination. To be clear, however, not all media or politicians are on the doom train. There are also positive stories out there and leaders calling for people to reason intelligently. But the loudest narratives lately have zeroed in on immigration as a convenient scapegoat for a host of issues. As one researcher put it, people are looking for someone to blame. The target, unfortunately easy one, is immigrants. That quote encapsulates how frustrating, in Canada's case, years of pandemic stress, inflation, and housing failures created a powder keg of public anger and anti-immigrant framing, providing the spark for all of this. Behind the statistics and policies, there's a very human story unfolding. On both sides, many Canadians are experiencing genuine anxiety and frustration, while many immigrants are feeling unfairly blamed and unwelcome. Now let's talk about these emotions because they explain a lot about why attitudes have shifted so sharply. For average Canadians, the past few years have been tough. Imagine you're a young adult who finally hoped to buy a house, but prices doubled and now even rent is through the roof. Or you're a parent waiting months to get a family doctor for your child. Or you've seen your grocery bills shoot up while your paycheck doesn't. These kinds of struggles create stress and even despair. In that state, it's human to look for causes or culprits to blame. When people hear again and again that record immigration is contributing to population growth, which is in turn linked to housing demand and service backlogs, it's not a stretch for frustration to turn into resentment. It may not be fair or rational. After all, immigrants themselves are not setting the housing prices, but it feels like a convenient explanation for why life has gotten harder. It's easier to say, oh, if we just had fewer people coming, maybe my rent wouldn't be so high, than to explain them through interest rates, zoning laws, and the other things that may have affected it. So we see an emotional cocktail. Frustration, I can't afford my life. Fear, will my kids have opportunities in this crowded market? And even envy, the perception that immigrants get support or jobs that should go to locals. Whether true or not, this perception exists. There's also a sense of loss among some Canadians. A feeling that the character of their town or city is changing too fast, that they are strangers in their own community due to rapid demographic shifts, ties into cultural fears. Now, consider the perspective of immigrants and recent newcomers in this climate. Many came to Canada precisely because of its reputation for tolerance and opportunity. To arrive and sense a growing hostility is very painful. Even if most Canadians are still friendly individually, the general atmosphere has changed. Newcomers read the headlines too. They see politicians suggesting caps and cuts. They hear about provincial surveys talking of denying them services. They notice when locals gripe about immigrants on talk radio or on Facebook. Many international students, for example, have expressed that they feel scapegoated for the housing crisis. One student leader likened proposed student caps to victim blaming, saying that they are the sufferers. Government policy created a housing bubble, and then students get blamed. Refugee claimants sleeping in churches have said that they feel unwanted, caught in political crossfire when all they seek is safety. This has an emotional toll on immigrants. Feelings of alienation, stress, and even regret. Some long-time immigrants have reported that they've never seen the discourse get this negative before, and it makes them worry about their and their children's acceptance in the Canadian society. There's a palpable fear in some immigrant communities that they are becoming targets of resentment or even violence through no fault of their own. So we have a troubling dynamic. Canadians under economic and social strain, and immigrants becoming the convenient outlet for that strain. It breeds a vicious cycle. Even some who don't support xenophobia might start to emotionally distance themselves. Example, a struggling renter might say, I have nothing against immigrants, but right now, I just resent anyone adding to the competition for apartments. That resentment can be felt by its targets, regardless of the preface. And for immigrants, especially those who did manage to buy a home or get a good job, there's sometimes a feeling of walking on eggshells. Like any success might invite bitter comments about foreigners taking houses or taking jobs from Canadians. On a society level, this shift in mood is eroding social cohesion. Canada's strength has been the idea that we all come together from different backgrounds to build a better life here. When economic times were easier, it was easier to feel that harmony. Under the stress, though, cracks are appearing. Group identity politics are rising, scapegoating is rising, and trust is falling. We are at a point where some Canadians and newcomers are effectively staring at each other across a divide of misunderstanding. The good news is, it's not too late to bridge that gap, but it requires addressing the root causes of the frustration and actively countering the harmful narratives, which leads us to our final section. What do experts suggest we do about all of this? Let's talk about solutions. The big question is, how can Canada navigate all of this? How do we address legitimate public concerns without throwing away the benefits of immigration or our values of inclusion? Experts from economists and urban planners to immigration scholars have been weighing this matter. There's no magic fix, but several clear ideas have emerged. 1. Plan better. Align immigration with capacity. This one is almost common sense. Do not set immigration targets in a vacuum. Coordinate them with housing and infrastructure plans. If Canada is going to bring in 500,000 people a year, then make sure we're also on track to build, say, 500,000 housing units over a few years, plus expanding transit, schools, and hospitals. The recent government decision to lower targets for 2025 to 2027 can be seen in this light. Recalibration to buy time for capacity to catch up. Going forward, experts suggest stronger federal-provincial coordination. Provinces and cities should be at the table when setting immigration numbers to ensure local readiness. As one immigration official put it, we need to balance labor needs with sustainability. 2. Build. Housing and infrastructure. Almost everyone agrees that the housing crisis must be tackled head-on. Stopping immigration isn't a real solution to housing. Building homes is. Canada needs a Manhattan project for housing. Cut the red tape, incentivize affordable rental construction, convert unused offices to apartments, as was suggested in one policy paper, and invest in public housing. Some specific ideas include a national student housing project. Since international students have been a flashpoint, the government could fund or facilitate tens of thousands of new dormitory units near colleges and universities. This would relieve pressure on local rental markets and show good faith that we're not leaving students in the lurch. Similarly, expanding public transit and healthcare in high immigrant areas can the feeling of strain. The key message from experts is this: the answer lies in increasing supply, not in closing the door to people. As one commentator succinctly said, yes, we must act on housing, but the answer lies in quick, targeted measures to increase supply, not in shutting out global talent. In other words, fix the bottlenecks rather than stopping the flow. 3. Improve the immigration system management. This includes cracking down on abuses and backlogs that erode public confidence. Ensure employers are genuinely trying to hire Canadians before getting temporary foreign worker permits, and enforce decent wages for temporary foreign workers so they aren't used to undercut locals. Also, streamlining the asylum process, like having more judges and faster hearings, will prevent thousands of claimants from languishing in shelters for years, shortening the limbo benefits for everyone. When Canadians see the system working, that is, immigrants contributing and integrating, not being exploited or stuck on welfare, they feel more positive. A well-managed system is less likely to attract fire. Recent policy moves like prioritizing PR for those already here on work permits so they don't add to population growth, and focusing on skills that are in real shortage are steps in this direction. 4. Communicate and educate. Many experts emphasize the need for better public communication about immigration. The government and community leaders should actively counter myths. For example, the myth that immigrants get free houses or huge benefits. They don't. Newcomers actually have fewer entitlements initially than citizens. Highlight success stories like immigrants who started businesses that create jobs, doctors who filled rural healthcare gaps, etc. Public opinion can be guided by narrative. For years, Canada's narrative was immigration is part of who we are. It needs refreshing in the current context. Perhaps a new narrative like immigration done right can solve problems, like bringing in more construction workers to build the homes that we need. 5. Foster integration and community connections. Part of reducing resentment is increasing positive contact between existing Canadians and newcomers. When you know an immigrant family personally, you are less likely to blame them for societal issues. Communities can facilitate this through local programs from mentorship, parents, cultural exchange events to community dialogues where grievances can be aired and addressed constructively. Governments can support NGOs that help immigrants find housing and jobs without displacing locals. For example, programs that match immigrants to job vacancies in smaller regions that need people, taking pressure off the big cities. 6. Address root economic issues for all. Finally, and this is broader, experts say address the root causes of Canadians' economic frustrations. That means tackling affordability in general, not just housing, but also healthcare access, education costs, wages, and so on and so forth. If Canadians feel that their prospects are improving, they will be far less likely to look for scapegoats. A booming, well-managed economy tends to breed optimism and generosity. Think about it. During the good economic times, immigration controversies usually fade because people feel so. Policies that raise incomes, like maybe tax breaks or skills training for citizens, and those that improve public services, like a big boost to healthcare funding and training more doctors, will indirectly reduce resentment towards immigrants. It's about ensuring that everyone feels that they are benefiting from Canada's growth story. To illustrate one expert perspective, a senior researcher, Keith Newman, noted that historically, Canadians mostly debated who the immigrants are, skills, origin, etc. But now the focus is on whether we have the capacity for immigrants or not. He suggests that because this is a new kind of concern, the solutions must focus on building that capacity. Essentially, what we listed before: housing, infrastructure, better planning. The consensus among most policy experts is that Canada doesn't need to slam the door shut. It needs to get its house in order, literally and figuratively, to keep welcoming people without overwhelming communities. Encouragingly, When asked, many Canadians still acknowledge the benefits of immigration. In a poll, 40% said it fills labor market gaps. And we see that with many industries that are needing workers. And about a quarter credited it with cultural enrichment and economic growth. Only 3 in 10 people said no benefits at all, which, while a sizable minority, means that 70% still see some upside to immigration. That suggests that there's grounds to rebuild a positive narrative on it. In summary, experts and leaders propose a mix of policy fixes and narrative resets to address Canadians' concerns. Better align the numbers with capacity, aggressively expand housing and services, manage programs to be fair, and tell the story of immigration's value in a truthful but hopeful way. It's not an overnight process, but Canada has the tools and the experience to do it. The payoff would be not just calming the current negativity, but ensuring that the country continues to thrive with both a growing population and a high quality of life. We've journeyed through a lot together in this video, from polls and protests to fears and hopes. Canada's mood on immigration has undeniably darkened. Immigrants who once felt embraced here may now sense suspicion or even hostility, and that's a sobering reality for a nation that is built on diversity. Our population is aging, and without immigration, we simply won't have enough workers and taxpayers to support our standard of living in the future. So, completely closing the door isn't a viable or wise option. The solution lies in managing things smarter, not stopping them altogether. The encouraging part is that this negative trend can be reversed. It has happened before. The Canadian ethos of tolerance and welcome is still there. Maybe a bit overshadowed at the moment, but it's not gone. Immigrants, for their part, continue to show resilience and contribute in countless ways, even as they hear some unkind words in the public sphere. With a friend, I might put it like this: Canada is having some growing pains. We opened our doors wide, and maybe our house wasn't quite ready for so many guests at once. Some household members, the public, are annoyed about the crowded living room. But the answer isn't to lock the door and kick people out. It's to renovate the house, build an addition, fix the plumbing so everyone can live comfortably. And while that's happening, we need to remind the household why we invited guests in the first place. Because they bring new energy, new stories, new skills, and yes, they pay the bills too. Many immigrants watching this situation unfold have felt a bit of heartbreak. Does Canada still want us here? And to them, we both honesty and encouragement. Honesty that yes, things are tough and some folks are lashing out unfairly, but encouragement that Canada's fundamental openness isn't dead. The very fact that we're having this detailed discussion, looking for solutions to regain a positive balance, is a good sign. It means that we're not succumbing blindly to fear. We're trying to solve the issues together. The mood has shifted, yes, but moods are not permanent. With the right leadership and community effort, Canada can restore confidence that immigration is managed for everyone's benefit, and immigrants can go back to feeling like valued members of the Canadian family, not unwelcome guests. So, to answer our initial question, why are Canadians becoming more negative towards immigration? It's about real strain and fear of the future. But armed with this understanding, Canada can make choices that address those strains and alleviate the fear rather than giving into it. The hope is that a few years from now, we will look back on this moment as a learning curve when Canada confronted some hard truths, did the hard work to fix them, and emerged still true to its welcoming nature. After all, the Canadian story has always been one of people coming together from all over the world to build something special here. That story isn't over. It's just going through a challenging chapter. Let's make sure the next chapter is one where everyone, old Canadians and new Canadians alike, feels secure, heard, and hopeful about our shared future. Next week, we'll continue our series on moving from international students to permanent residents, and I am addressing two of the most popular provinces that you asked for in the comments. But I needed to take a step back and talk about this issue of why Canadians are becoming more resistant towards immigration, and together for us to seek a solution to it, because indeed, like we just saw from this video, there is a solution and we can all work together towards it if we want to. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. I'm going to see you in the next video.